If you do wish to ask questions, we will always try and fit that in towards the end. Now, I'm delighted to welcome our headline sponsor, the Skills Federation, the organisation that works with employer members to collaborate on skills in their sectors, working with government on research and labour market insights. There's been a slight change to the programme. It became obvious when we start. The panel discussion was going to be led by Keith Truslove, who's account director, but will now be hosted by the Skills Federation newly appointed Chief Executive, Dr. Fiona Aldridge. So please welcome to the stage, Dr. Fiona Aldridge.
Good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to be here, and thank you, Keith, for letting me take over this session. I joined the Skills Federation about a month ago. It's been a real pleasure to get to know the organisation and the work that we do. Prior to that, I was working with Richard Parker on his youth plan. So the sorts of things that he's been talking about was very much what I was involved in, and certainly for that mayor and for others like him, that integration around further education and higher education to meet regional skills needs is really important. So if you work in an area where you do have a mayor, I would definitely encourage you to invest in that relationship and think about skills needs. But this session and this job. I am Fiona Aldridge. I'm going to chair a panel session on addressing the challenges in delivering degree apprenticeships. We're going to have a panel discussion. So my panel is just being mic'd up as we speak. If you want to come to the front when you're mic'd up, and I will do an intro until you get there. As you heard in the introduction, Skills Federation is the voice of employer-led sector skills bodies. We bring together the shared perspectives of different industries on how the UK can build a workforce able to meet our skills needs. As part of that, we're working closely with government on the skills needs for our new industrial strategy and our regional economic plans. Our members, employer-led sector skills bodies, they cover around 20 or so sectors of the economy, around 150,000 employers, large and small, across the UK. And they are funded by their industries to provide a sectoral voice and support on skills issues. So their challenge is to say, what are the skills needed to ensure that this sector grows and thrives, and how do we meet it? As an organisation, we are delighted to work with UVAC throughout the year and to be a sponsor at the conference today. Some of you may be less familiar with Skills Federation and more familiar with ACE360, which is a unique endpoint assessment platform that is part of the organisation. We have certificated more than 2 million apprenticeships since its launch, more than 263,000 in the last year. My colleagues are out on the stand in the exhibition hall, so please do come and have a conversation with us afterwards. Now, my panel is in place, so let me turn to the conversation. With me, I have Stephen Willis from Middlesex University, I have Alex Morrison from Buckinghamshire New University, and Mark Fitzgerald representing ACE360. Thank you all for joining me. I wondered if Alex and Stephen, first of all, you could just say a little bit about your degree apprenticeship offer in your institution. What's the role of it? Why do you offer them, and what difference does it make? Just a quick intro.
Yeah, thank you. So we offer 14 different apprenticeship standards, mainly in the public sector. We have around about, our apprenticeship numbers hover around about sort of 1,400, and we've been delivering them for 7 years. Recently, the university has decided that the apprenticeships are going to become more central to the university's vision, and we're looking to grow our numbers over the next few years.
Fabulous.
Yeah, we're very similar in terms of the offer. So we've got about 1,000 apprentices currently, primarily within public sector, primarily within the nursing and policing sectors. So we started delivering apprenticeships back in the 2017-2018 academic year, responding to employer demand, really. So when the levy sort of came into effect, and you know, the public sector that we worked with, they had a huge amount of levy to spend, and training budgets dried up, so they were looking to utilise that. So we were kind of working already in those sectors and already had the good employer relationships, so we just carried on doing what we were already doing.
That's fabulous, and it was great to hear from Manchester earlier on about the great evidence and the impact that apprenticeships are making. Could I ask you what the biggest challenge is that you faced in delivering degree apprenticeships? It's been great to see the growth in numbers. It's been great to see the impact, but this is new business for lots of organisations. What's been your biggest challenge?
I think for us, it's ensuring that our programme delivery teams fully understand what delivering an apprenticeship is above and beyond just, delivering their expertise through modules. It's understanding all the different rules and regulations from all the governing bodies like the ESFA, Ofsted, OFS, continue the list. That's been our biggest challenge.
Yeah, I think for us very similar, but also understanding the roles and responsibilities within the organisation. So understanding who's accountable for what, where that sits. Sometimes the processes are overlapping, or apprenticeships often seen as a square peg in a round hole, don't quite fit. Our current processes, we've done loads of work to align ourselves with standard university practice, but also to fulfil all the different regulatory requirements. And I think that's one of the areas that I think ACE360 has been beneficial, because it's given us that clear sort of definition of the training provider side and the EPAO side as well. So we've got that clear water between the two.
That's really helpful. And Mark, for those who haven't heard of ACE360 or don't use it, could you just give us a quick outline of what it is and how it can help with these challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so ACE360 is the simplest way to explain it, is an endpoint assessment platform, which basically helps you manage the endpoint assessment journey. So whether that is integrated degree apprenticeships, non-integrated degree apprenticeships, the theory of the system is to create transparency so you can see how your learners are progressing through endpoint assessments. And if you are delivering integrated degree apprenticeships, making sure that the process that sits around EPA is managed centrally within the ACE360 system and hits all of the compliance needs, helps you with audit trails, helps you report on how apprentices, as I say, are progressing through endpoint assessments and just hitting those key milestones that they need as they're going through that journey.
Great, thank you. Mark and so Alex and Stephen, can I ask you, as a university, what's the biggest change that you've had to adapt to as you have grown your apprenticeship provision?
Well, for us, I would say one of the biggest challenges was dealing with endpoint assessment when it eventually came round. So we've been delivering apprenticeships for 7 years. And it wasn't, endpoint assessment wasn't really part of our thinking at the beginning. It was more about, making sure we're recruiting the right people and delivering a good program. And then, 3 years down the line, all of a sudden we had to start thinking about endpoint assessment. So, that was a big challenge to making sure that everybody understood what their role was, what we had to do, and it wasn't just a case of, putting somebody through and giving them their degree. So, that was a big change for us. We had to do a lot of work to ensure that we had all of our systems and processes and the right people in place to make sure that we were doing what we were supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and how did you manage that? What's some of the practical things that you did to...
Well, so we implemented ACE360 quite early on. A big trigger for us was one of our public sector apprenticeships, where we've got about 70% of our entire population is on that police apprenticeship programme, so we knew that we had to get that right. We had a very demanding employer, which is their right, but that helped us to sort of ensure that we were doing the right thing, because at the same time we also had some other employers on smaller apprenticeships where their engagement wasn't really quite what it should be, and they were quite passive. So it gave us the expertise to start driving what we wanted them to do and making sure that they were engaged right from the off and all the way through.
No, that's really helpful, thank you.
I think ours was the introduction of the APM role, so it's apprenticeship partnership managers, which is other people call skills coaches or assessors or tutors. They facilitate the tripartite reviews. And when I think we first introduced them, they were part of the schools, so they sat within the individual schools where the apprenticeships were. And we had to unpick that and bring them central into the hub. And I think what that's done is it's allowed us to sort of standardise the practice a bit more and to have standardised practice across all the different apprenticeships that we offer. You know, essentially they are there to do the tripartite reviews, so it's very much about compliance and that side of things, but they also do all the pastoral work as well, so they bring so much more to that. So we've also introduced sort of RAG rating systems as well, so using data from different sources to understand how people are doing, you know, looking at metrics like off the job training and you know, when they were last seen for tripartite reviews. So I think, you know, the change has been kind of coming over a few years, but we're kind of working towards that now, you know, where we've got that standardized practice and we've got a clear KPIs for the business, and we can see that quite clearly through our data reporting and things like that.
No, that's really helpful. Can I ask you particularly about the sort of dual roles that you have as both a training provider and an endpoint assessment organisation? It's a debate that's happening quite a lot in the FE system at the minute, and the potential for conflict of interest. How do you manage that? How do you structure how you deliver an apprenticeships? What else do you have around it so that you're avoiding that conflict of interest and avoiding those accusations, essentially, I guess, of marking your own homework?
Yeah. I mean, so we identified quite quickly that was something we would need to address, and so we've put a specialist unit in place within our assessment department, our existing assessment department at the university. We've created a endpoint assessment hub within that, where the people that are involved in processing all the endpoint assessments, organising when they will happen, managing the independent assessors, sits completely separately from the faculty staff that are delivering the programme. So we think that helps ensure that there isn't a conflict of interest. So we kind of separate that out. ACE360 has helped us do that, even just with the dashboard where you can see that clear line between the provider side and the endpoint assessment side, and we've tried to reflect that in the way that we've structured our resources around apprenticeships.
No, that's helpful. How about you, Stephen? How are you managing that?
So we've got a dedicated EPA manager that we brought in that only works post-gateway, doesn't touch anything beforehand. Again, you know, having that clear sort of separation on ACE360 is really helpful as well, because, you know, what it does is it allows the training provider side of the business, the APMs, the academics, to upload information into that side of the system, and then on the other side of the system, the EPA manager sits and organises all that sort of thing around that side. So in terms of like conflict of interest, we've got that clear water between the two sides of the business, and we've also got all the processes aligned with that as well. So
that's okay. Mark, can you talk us through, because it's a real challenge, isn't it? And it's something that when you use ACE360 as opposed to manage it yourself, it can really support. We're very focused on the fact that this is a real challenge. Could you talk us through how it does that?
Yeah, absolutely. So just following on from what Alex and Stephen have mentioned, that's one of the beauties of ACE360. It creates that clear split on the main dashboard with the apprentice profile. It's really clear to see who's responsible for the provider elements of the journey and who's responsible for the EPA elements of the journey. And that's something which I think, working with universities, probably my biggest piece of advice would be make sure that there is a clear split between who's managing that provider process and who's managing that EPA process. Without that clear split, it's hard to allocate accountability, ownership of who's going to get involved within those two areas. So when using the system, as Alex and Stephen have mentioned, because there's two different portals, so one would be a provider portal and one would be an EPA portal, it just means that you can dish out those responsibilities quite easily. But also when it comes to using the system for recording the bookings of EPA components, or even when EPA components are completed, anyone that is delivering or assessing those EPA components has to go through a conflict of interest statement within the system. They've got to confirm there's no conflict with the provider, no conflict with the employer, and no conflict with the learner, and all of that is tracked within the system. And as I say, it creates that clear distinction of who's responsible for both sides, whilst also giving that transparency to both sides. So if you are a provider, you can log on and you can see how a learner is actually going through that endpoint journey. So when are those components being booked? Has information been uploaded to the EPA components? You won't be able to see the EPA evidence because, again, it's creating that clear distinction between the provider and the EPAO side. But all of it is contained within the system, stored within the system, and just makes life a little bit easier when it comes to, if you are delivering integrated degree apprenticeships, making, as I say, life a little bit easy and removing what is, quite a big barrier to face when it comes to delivering endpoint assessments. I think, as the guys have mentioned as well, one other thing would be the resource factor. So both Alex and Stephen have mentioned bringing new colleagues into the business in new roles. Again, that would be one big advice that I'd have for you guys, is if you are going to be delivering integrated degree apprenticeships, because there does have to be that split between what you're doing as a provider and what you're doing as an endpoint assessment organisation, try and ensure that that resource is allocated to both elements. Without that, again, it becomes difficult to manage. It's who's going to own the process, who's going to get involved, and it just becomes a little bit of the wild, wild west in a way. So again, ACE360 just brings that in, contains it, and really does help split those two factors out. But I think resource is definitely an element where, if you are going to go down that route of doing the integrated ones, please try and allocate or look at who can manage that endpoint process, who can manage the provider process. And that's something, if you do come on board, or if you do use ACE360, or you have a conversation with us around how we can support that, we can give you advice on how it can be done, what a structure could be. And that just comes from experience of working with endpoint assessment organisations, working with universities, and just the skill and expertise that we've got within the business, having, as Fiona mentioned, certificated over 2.7 million apprentices over the time that we've been a business. So we can support and help you with that process side. Sorry, that was a really long-winded answer.
No, it was a great answer. And actually, having practical advice when you're starting new things is really important. Alex and Stephen, I guess that sticking with the theme of practical advice and reflecting the conversation we had, the question we had earlier from Amazon, what are your top tips for other universities about working effectively with employers to deliver apprenticeships?
I think it's important to get off on the front foot, make sure that as a provider we're taking that role of leading that three-way relationship. Although on paper it's a three-way equal relationship, is definitely down to the provider to ensure that they're leading on that and making sure that apprentices and their employers are engaged right from the off, understand exactly what it is that they're undertaking, things like the progress review schedules, the importance of making sure that all the documentation is signed and that the employers support the apprentice in the right way in the workplace, all of those things. And I think being sort of proactive right from the off would be my tip. With regards to endpoint assessment as well, as having just gone through an OFS audit on our endpoint assessment activities, definitely look to ensure that you're really recording and evidencing absolutely everything, because they put us through the mill, and we came out of it successfully. But that was a lesson learned.
Congratulations, Alex.
Very similar, I think, but more probably about communication from the outset. I think even before the apprenticeship starts, we do loads of information days, make sure that people understand exactly what their role is in the apprenticeship, what they're signing up to, both the employer and the apprentice. Just having clear and transparent relationships throughout the journey, I think, is really key. So I'm a big ambassador for data and for sharing information through dashboards and through other things. For the people to understand where the risks are, where the high performers are, and very clear information, then I think that's probably my top tip.
Yeah, I think those points about communication, around data, around expectations are really, really important. Mark, can we help with that? Can ACE360 help with that data?
Yeah, absolutely. So not only just using the main dashboard where you can see and track that journey,
That's great. Thank you, Mark, and thank you, all of you. I think it's been really helpful to hear about your challenges, and I've been really pleased a month in to know that it's a good product, so that has been really encouraging. We do have an exhibition stand in the hall, so if you want to come and talk to us about how we can make that journey easier, how we can help resolve that conflict about being a training provider and need PAO, help you with your reporting to government and to employers, then please do come and talk to the team. That's it for our panel discussion. Happy to answer any questions that you might have for the panel, or to let you have coffee or the next speaker earlier. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What I would like to do is release the panel briefly, because we're going to have a change round. But because you've been asking the questions for 30 minutes, I think it's only fair you get some questions asked back to you. Yeah. But if you do have any questions before the panel goes, do raise your hands. We have some roving mics about any aspect of the conversation that you've heard over the last 30 minutes or so. No, I will release the panel. Can I just say before the panel goes, and we still got this here, Mark Fitzgerald, that's like an album cover, that picture.
Thank you.
Who did that?
Me.
Right, we all need that.
Me, yeah.
Whatever you look, go back to your LinkedIn profile, your Facebook profile, your whatever other profile channel. That is what you're aiming for. Yeah. Thank you very much to Mark Fitzgerald, Alex Morrison, and also Stephen Willis. Thank you for joining us. And if you could head to the back, we'll take your things off.
Thank you.
One of the things I just wanted to ask before we end this particular session, what is interesting is being in a room full of people who understand skills and who understand apprenticeships. That doesn't always happen. When I was about 10 years ago invited to a party with a very close work colleague, she happened to be, this is a very brief story and it's not rude, she happened to be a sex therapist. And when I went to this party, she said, oh no, it'd be great, come and meet, there are lots of people there you can meet. And every single person I asked, I said, what do you do? I'm a sex therapist. What do you do? I'm a sex... Anyway, I didn't expect to be in a room full of people where everybody says, well, actually, I'm into apprenticeships. That is not what I expected. But with regards to skills, there are lots of areas of society. I work in the media. The media is one of those that doesn't always get it, does not always understand the importance of skills, does not always understand why the skills area needs to be embraced. With the role you've had, July, so you're about 4 months, 5 months in now.
I'm a month in.
You're a month in?
I started in October.
Oh, it was announced in July. So this is unfair for me to track your progress on this, but what do you think the best way of getting that message out there about what skills actually can deliver and why they are so important?
It's a really challenging question, isn't it? There is supposed to be a quote that Tony Blair said, but I can't find it, but I'm just going to pretend it's there anyway, because we're in those politics now, aren't we? That if you ever wanted to hide an announcement that you were going to war, you'd put it in a skills speech. That idea that, you know, we all know skills is really important, but actually, and we know because we've had a good education, we see the impact of it, but too many people don't. And too many people who make policy, run big organisations, actually had a particular linear route and quite academic route, which means that the power of skills is something that hasn't quite clicked for them. What I would say, and I think going back to my previous role in the West Midlands, is that feels very different in a place, because in a place you've got the whole of a population and you have got some real challenges where you see skills going through absolutely everything. So Richard Parker talked about ambitions around growth, around jobs, around transport and around homes. You can't do any of those without skills. So it's not just a Department for Education issue, it's an absolutely everything issue. So when he's talking to employers, when he's talking about getting people to jobs through transport, where you need to build HS2, or you need bus drivers, or you need to build home, skills is critical to everything of that. And I do think that there's a potential to use those more local place-based leaders to really shape the agenda. What I am encouraged about by this government, though, is actually how they have started talking about skills from the outset. So whatever we think about some of the changes already, there have been, by the Prime Minister, by the Chancellor, by key mayors, a reference to skills and a recognition that this is really important. And I think it is therefore on us all to step up with those great examples from Manchester that we heard, with our own stories, being able to tell a better story about the difference that skills can make. So I think it's a bit up to us now to come together, all of us, and be able to demonstrate that and talk about it and tell a really good story.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Dr. Fiona Aldridge.